The competitive 40K network presents Art of War. Art of War. Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of War podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined all the way from a guest in the UK, Ben Jones. Ben, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
That's great. Ben, for those of you who may not know, is an established 40K player, a coach on Vanguard Tactics. He and I jousted in the shadow round of LVO back in 2023, and now he's here to talk about his wonderful performance at the Shefield 40K Super Major, where he made it all the way to the semifinals, top four, with an army that's been on the rise lately, Dark Angels Space Marines. How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. It was a good event, one of Zach's events up in Sheffield.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Zach is the guy behind the scenes in terms of all the London GT style major, super major events, and is a big part of how that scene has grown up a lot lately. So always love to see that support. This is going to be part one of a two-part show. In part one of this episode, we're going to learn about Ben, how he got into Warhammer, what his play style is, how he got good at this game. We're going to talk about his army list for the Dark Angels that have done so well, how it works, and what his strategy is on the tabletop. Then in part two, we're going to cover his games actually played. We're going to, the ins and outs, the hows, the who's, the whats, all the nitty-gritty details of all the games he played at the Sheffield Super Major. You can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/AOW40K. It's $6 a month, gets you access to this podcast, 250 plus other episodes, and our amazing Discord server with all kinds of top-level knowledge goodness. So Ben, are you ready to jump into this?
Yeah, let's get going.
All right. Tell me about you. How'd you get into Warhammer? How long have you been playing?
I've been playing and collecting Warhammer since I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I'm 32 now, so best part of 20 years.
Nice.
I started just with my brother. He actually brought some models home, and I was like, oh, these are cool. And then I got some models myself. But for several years, we just played for fun, like kitchen table and at mates' houses. And then one of my friends got me into playing it a bit more competitively. And actually the first competitive event I went to was a 30K event held by Games Workshop at one of the games days when I was about 16.
This is some ancient history back in like 2008 and stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, long time ago. And then from there, I got hooked on it, really, and there wasn't many 30K events, so I moved to 40K. And then from there, I've gone to events ever since. Try and do one or two a month.
Wow. So for that's like 20 years of consistently playing competitive.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely a good way to get better at the game. Holy crap. How have you seen the scene evolve? I mean, obviously, you've been playing for so long. I also been playing for about 20 years, and the scene, at least in the States, is dramatically different. Games Workshop is more evolved than ever. The terrain is kind of standardized. It's a lot more professional and is still growing that way. And not only that, but the community has really changed from like a gotcha kind of crummy, scummy attitude of a community to a really positive, inviting and welcoming place. What's your experience been like watching and being part of the community evolution over time?
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I used to struggle. We'd get maybe 30 or 40 people to go to an event in the UK. That was classed as a big event back when we started playing. And now we regularly get 300-400 people, sometimes more, 1,000 in Vegas. It's just
right.
The numbers are crazy for what you thought it was going to be. And it keeps getting better. And I agree, everyone you play in general is much nicer to play now. It's a much more of a community game. Everybody knows everybody.
With that in mind, kind of like what's been your drive to get better? Is it just like the product of 20 years of doing something? Or have you really kind of had a mentality shift somewhere in your Warhammer lifetime where you decided, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to get better at it?
Yeah, it's about 5 or 6 years ago. It might be a little bit more now if time goes quick, doesn't it? But I was playing, there was an event I went to where my friends dropped out because they had stuff on in their life, and I just went on my own. And it was round 2. I played Steve Box from our group Vanguard Tactics, and we had a very quick game, and then we chatted for a long time afterwards, for about 2 hours, and then ever since I started playing for Vanguard Tactics, and it gets you in a community of people similar to you, and then you've always got people to go to the events with, travel with, and from there I've been to lots of events, and I've been to like GTs in Gibraltar and America a couple of times. Just get to travel around and play. It's been really enjoyable.
Awesome. I love to see that. So for you, it was really that one moment, that game with Stephen Box, that kind of shifted your approach to the game. Like, I can take this seriously, I can take it competitively. What about that game was so transformative for you?
Well, it was when I think Steve had done one video at the time in the village hall where he started it years ago, and we were chatting. I took my horrible Eldar list I was playing with 9 aeroplanes, if you remember that list. And
oh yeah, that list was literally cancerous. Oh my god, I'm so glad that's not a thing anymore.
Went first in that game, and as you can tell, that was why it was a quick game. But we spent majority of our time just chatting for over 2 hours, really. And then
that's great. It's always
on
such
from there. So it was a really
such
good
a joy when you can make a real friend at the tabletop like that, and that happens more than you'd think. That's really exciting. Yeah,
and now we've got friends in America and Australia on our team, and
yeah, I mean, you and I played at LVO in 2023 or 2 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was 2023 when it was the Shadow Round.
It was the Shadow Round, right? That game, we've still stayed in touch since then, and occasionally, we have you on the podcast now. That's awesome.
I remember that game. That was a really, really close game, and then you managed to wiggle your favourite model, Fate Weaver, in and kill my Incarn, and
that's so true.
That's the point of the game, wasn't it?
Yeah, you were winning from the first turn on. You had such a great start, and I was just looking for any outs basically, but Fate Weaver found one.
Yeah, it's a brilliant game.
Awesome. So what would you say your play style is as it evolved over time? I know you played Yunari, and we played Yunari versus Demons back in 2023, but now you're playing Dark Angels, obviously. Do you have preferred armies? Do you have certain approaches to the game? How would you describe it?
I play all sorts of armies. My favorite is still Eldar Yunari, but I really like the combat phase as well, and the addition at the moment, Eldar, I feel, is more of a shooting army. Still got a lot of tricks, but most of its damage is shooting. So I just fancied playing some more combat again. And then went with this latest balance update and a couple of the changes to the Dark Angels. I gave them a go, and I've played two 5-round GTs, one being a super major, one being, I think the other one was probably a super major. It's nearly 200 people at Glasshammer a couple of weeks before. And I've been enjoying the play style. I like the Gladius detachment because it lets you make your army fast when you need it fast. Fall back and charge, fall back and shoot. You got almost the flexibility of a little bit like Eldar, but with Space Marines.
I've never heard anyone call Gladius Eldar. That's the first.
It's like slower Eldar.
Eldar's kind of known for its speed. Slower Eldar. I don't know if it's still Eldar. Yeah. That's cool though. So what drew you to Gladius? I know you mentioned you're not really feeling the shooty version of the elves these days, but when I think of okay, my Eldar aren't playing how I want to, I don't go to Space Marines. That's quite the jump. What makes you feel like they are similar to Eldar?
I don't know. Similar to Eldar, I've probably described that wrong. I like the flexibility of the Gladius detachment. Being able to not get locked in, and
you always have plays, you always have an out.
Always got an answer of something you can do to affect the game, whereas some other detachments I feel you can just get bogged in and can't do anything.
Yeah. Nice.
But no, I own lots of armies. I played Endless Swarm Tyranids a while ago for a couple of GTs. Sometimes in between playing Eldar as my main army, I switch up and have a few events on a different faction.
You're a man of many factions.
Yeah.
So it seems like you generally favor the combat side of things. Do you ever drift off into the shooting land, or are you just if it doesn't have a sword, I don't like it? Yeah,
sometimes I've played a lot of the old Eldar, Hail of Doom, and advanced shoot armies. Yeah. But I always had my Banshees or Incarn in there as well, so I still got a little bit of combat.
For sure. No, I can respect that. I also having zero combat. I can't live like that.
No.
Yeah. Awesome. So what was the meta like in the UK? Right now it's kind of a bit of the Wild West here in the Pariah Nexus world, and then obviously the Balanced Data Slate, the Minotaur and Field Manual. The game is really wide from what it seems. Like there's so much potential to do well with almost any faction, and within that faction, different kinds of builds. It's actually very healthy. So what did you expect to see, and how do you build lists for such an environment?
Yeah, we've seen the same as what you've just described, really. There's a lot of different armies being taken. I've just built my Gladius list to just be able to try and have a game into any list. So got tools for a bit of everything.
Play good Warhammer.
Yeah, but we've seen a lot of sisters. Necrons and demons have been pretty popular over here.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, as you'll probably see in a minute from the tournament I played at, but 3 rounds of it were all Necrons.
Wow. I thought Necrons were knocked off the pedestal. That's so interesting.
They like them here.
Yeah, I was commentating the U.S. Open in Tacoma this past week, and it was all Thunderwolves. I mean, not all Thunderwolves, but there was a lot of Thunderwolves. Do you guys see much of that?
Yeah. There's Wolf Jail over here as well.
Yeah, of course.
About 12, sometimes 18 Thunderwolves.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. So when you're going into such a wide environment, what kind of tools are you looking to introduce into your army? How do you kind of plan for that? Space Marines have such an array of data sheets, right? Like there's so many ways to achieve victory. How did you approach it?
Yeah, the first event I went to the couple of weekends before, I played a similar list, but I had the Lion in there as well, just to try him out with his new rules. Now I can go through rules and stuff. But I found in a couple of my games, I just really lacked a shooting threat. So I was looking at like rebuilding the list, and I was like, he was the bit that I was happy cutting out. And then I thought I tried the Howl Blaster brick, because I felt in some of the games I was playing, people could just sit in the open in front of the combat army as long as they stayed far enough back. I couldn't interact with some parts of it.
Right.
Especially Sisters of Battle with all the castigators.
Yeah, it can be brutal on Foot Marines for sure.
Oh yeah. I got absolutely brutalized a couple of weeks before by Sisters on stream.
So basically, you just needed to have some shooting. Is the idea here?
Yes. Yeah. One decent shooting threat that could actually come out and deal with something.
Now, when you think of Space Marines as a combat army, and that's kind of like what you like here, I think of like Blood Angels is where my head goes to. What drove you to Dark Angels and a Dark Angel Gladius at that?
When I saw the balance update and the changes to the Deathwing Knights and the sword, the Inner Circle models, I think they're really cool models anyway.
Right.
They're almost like better Blade Guard, I think. They got added rules, and they hit.
Deathwing Knights are an insane data sheet. Don't sell me on that. I just think of Dark Angels as more of like a sit there and kind of super not fast, like they're Terminators, right? But maybe I'm wrong on that. I mean, they are insane doing stuff.
I play them quite aggressively, and I use the advance and charge turn to really get them across the board, and the rapid ingress on the Deathwing Knights.
Okay, I'm really curious how this all works. Let's just get right into it. Ben, why don't you tell me about your list?
Yeah, sure. Let's put it up on here. So the Warlord's Azrael, as I think nearly every Dark Angels list is. I had a captain with a Relic Shield, and then 2 Librarians, a Lieutenant with the Fire Discipline enhancement, an Assault Intercessor squad, a Normal Intercessor squad, an Impulsor, and then 2 units of Jump Pack Intercessors, 2 units of Deathwing Knights with the Mauls, a 10-man Howl Blaster squad, 2 squads of 6 Inner Circle Companions, and then 2 Scout squads. And that was the list.
So you followed rule of 2 for this one.
Yeah. 2 of each thing that's good, yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I think you get a wider array of units that way, and that gives you more tools for your toolbox. I really like it. But walk me through it. Like, what is this army doing? I see 2 Deathwing Terminator squads. I see 2 Inner Circle squads, big Hellblaster brick. Like, you have these big, durable, seemingly slow, maybe not slow Space Marines. And then you have like good Space Marine good stuff, right? Scouts, Jump Back Intercessors. But like, how does this come together? What is the plan here?
Yeah, so I usually, unless I'm playing an army that doesn't have any guns, like maybe World Eaters or something similar to that, I usually put Azrael and the Lieutenant with the Howl Blasters, and they're just they're on foot. Usually on the UKTC terrain maps, we've got one decent room we can hide a unit in. So they're ready to come out. And then obviously they're assault weapons anyway, but in Gladius you can assault and shoot for a turn anyway with everybody.
So they're basically just staged behind some ruin, waiting for your opponent to eventually come into line of sight and just annihilate them.
Yeah.
What's the damage we're talking about for a Hellblaster and Azrael and the Lieutenant it was? I'm just not familiar.
Yeah, so if you go in Devastator Doctrine and you've always got the strat to 1 CP, put them back into Dev. So they can be in Dev all game if you want for a CP. It means that the Relic on the Lieutenant, because it's Lieutenant, you've already got lethal hits. And then it gives you sustained and lethal 5s in Devastator. So I'm talking like in this unit it almost one-taps the Silent King.
Jesus. Okay, so each guy fires. What's the stats on each guy?
So each guy is 2 shots, strength 8 if you overcharge AP3 damage 2.
Strength 8, AP3 damage 2. Crit 5s, lethal hits, sustained hits. And then Azrael's reroll hits?
No, Oath gives you you put Oath on whatever you want to kill,
right,
and then you reroll all hits and you just fish for the 5s.
That's crazy. That is, I mean, I've done the lethal sustained 5s with Abaddon before in my Chaos days, and it's like, it's a ludicrous amount of damage. On a profile like 832 plasma guns, I could totally see that annihilating almost anything.
Yeah, and then you roll 10 hazardous, obviously, and if you roll 1s on a 3-up, you shoot again.
So you can just fire multiple times. Then I imagine
you can.
You're trying to shoot to kill yourself on Overwatch. Oh my god.
Yeah. So like in games, I just one-tapped the Bloodthirster, one-tap Be'lakor, one turn after another in a demon game.
My demon heart is heavy. Don't tell me that.
Yeah. I knew that would upset you a little bit.
It really did. What are you doing here?
So they kind of just hide until there's something worth trading them for. And then a lot of the time, if you position them correctly, they don't even trade, because a small unit can't come and tie them up either, because you've got Azrael and a Lieutenant in there with their combat, and they get sustained on the combat as well because of Azrael.
Right. And Azrael also just like hits pretty hard, so you can't like trivially charge this unit and try to kill it or tie it up. It will just annihilate you back.
Yeah, the Lieutenant gives it permanent fallback shoot and charge as well.
Oh, it's so nasty.
So it's like, and Azrael gives the whole unit a 4-up inbon.
So this is like your big centerpiece damage dealing ranged unit, and then you play the game with like Terminator Scouts and Vanguard and Jump Pack Intercessors around that. Yeah,
so in a lot of my games, like so turn 1, I'd push the Assault Intercessors up just to score cards and then stage the Terminators, because it's really hard to kill Deathwing Knights for some armies. Some armies just...
So walk me through the defensive profile of the Terminators.
So
it's tough dudes.
Yeah, T5 with 4 wounds and -1 damage, 2-up armor save, obviously.
Yeah, so
And
basically they can stand in cover with Armor of Contempt for a 0-up save functionally, unless someone ignores cover or AOC for somehow, which basically means damage AP2 and less are negligible, and AP3 only puts them to a 3-up save. And then once you finally crack that, -1 damage, 4 wound models, 4-up invul.
Yeah, they're very difficult to shift.
What kind of armies or units do actually threaten you, or do you just not care, walk them in the front? Like, this is tougher than Custodies in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think on like Future List I'd have 3 units in, because there are some armies where you can just walk them out and stand there. I think the only army that quickly dealt with them, to my surprise, on the weekend was the semi-final against Admech.
New Admech, that's spicy.
Just massive volume of like AP2 shots, but just like hundreds of them.
Yeah,
so eventually you fail your saves and you die anyway. So
yeah, Admech way.
But like against, say, like in like a lot of the premier combat units in the game are 2 damage, well, they go straight down to 1.
That's so true.
They can take the charge
like
off a lot
Blood
of
Angels,
stuff.
the faction, World Eaters, the faction. It's all made of damage too.
Yeah, like World Eaters, you can stand them in front of a squad of 8 bound or exalted, and they won't die. You might lose 1 or 2.
That's crazy. Like,
yeah,
it'd be one thing if like they don't die, you lose 4, but no, they lose 1 or 2. That's really the math.
The only unit I've had that one-shot it in combat so far is a Lemur Artist and 10 Death Company, but that's to be expected.
So sorry, I cut you off because I wanted to just harp on the durability of these things for a minute, but please go back to the overall strategy for this army.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I tended to have one turn where I staged, and then I play quite aggressively anyway. I then popped the Assault Doctrine, usually even some games on the UKTC maps, because we played the new, I forget the deployment, the one that's like steps now.
Tipping point.
Because you're pretty close. We've got like a big owl on the corner of that, both sides. So
right.
I could cross that distance quite quickly with a combat army. So often,
you had like an L-shaped Druid at the tip of your tipping point deployment zone?
Yes.
That is powerful. That is really good.
That was on a couple of the maps. I think 2 of the maps there was an owl pretty close to the edge of the deployment.
Did you know that going in and like plan to bring an assault melee infantry force to make use of that, or was that just like
all the maps are released before time?
Oh, okay, so you can really game the system in a way here.
You could, yeah. There's still like the owl that's put down towards the front. If you get like a fast shooting army against you, they can still come down the side and see into it.
Yeah.
So there is risk to putting your whole army there if you play someone with some good shooting.
Well, it's a good thing no one runs guns these days.
Apart from Sister Say.
Yeah, exactly. So you're kind of staged up in this midfield ruin with the Terminators, and you're charging turn 1 with this, or you're like running up and then charging turn 2.
Usually turn 2. I had a couple of games. If someone pushes on me fast, I will sometimes turn 1 pop it and just go, because lots of units are durable. So the 2 Terminator squads are hard to kill. The Inner Circle Companions, the way I've got them, the Librarians give them 4 Pinvons. And then they're led by a character, so they're -1 to hit. And then if you hit anything with a character in, they're +1 to hit. So again, that's like 6 3-wound guys that are -1 to hit with a 4 Pinvon.
Right.
And then in a lot of games, I've only got the 1 impulsor, but if you've already like committed, you just advance it up behind, and then if they've got good melee that wants to come deal with your sword guys again, you can squad tactics back into the transport.
That's really good. Well, walk me through that interaction. That seems crazy.
So the squad tactics, the Gladius strat, you can make a normal move up to D6, and if you're in I think it's the Tactical Doctrine, you go flat 6, but because it's a normal move, as long as you're in within 3 of the transport, you can get back in.
Right.
So against combat armies, you can come out, hit them, and then make sure that the way you position your models, you're close enough to the transport that when they come.
That's why there's an impulsor, basically just to open up this play.
Yeah, and also at the start to like be able to move one of the combat units up to where it's needed quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in some games I just I hide the tank behind a wall and just use it as a stage, so one squad gets out and the next squad gets in.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's such a... So you're kind of like a stage charge assault army, basically.
Yeah, that's how I was playing it, because it's a lot of fun to play.
Do you think like that's like the play pattern typically, or is it just like if your opponent leaves you alone but you're on the objectives, you don't leave your huts, you just stay on the midfield on objectives?
Yeah, if I was going to win the game just by standing still, I'd probably just stand still.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, silly question.
It's probably not it's not normally how I like to play. Just sit there.
No, I gotcha. So when is the big hammer unit coming? Because I was imagining that was like a counter shooting unit. So like someone comes in and tries to deal with your Terminators, you counter shoot them with the Hellblasters. Was that not how you used them?
That's also a tactic as well. Like if there was a game with like a scary threat to my army, I usually just run the Terminators up onto the objectives or behind walls where they're in the game, and armies have to really commit to kill the 5 Deathwing Knights.
Right.
So, and then you bring their threat out, and then you can counter with the Hellblasters or the sword Inner Circle guys.
Yeah, that's definitely devastating, right? Like you have to overcommit to even try to kill these Terminators, and so many armies can't. So like at that point, after you've overcommitted, haven't killed them, get blasted by this crazy plasma unit, what's left? Like you can't keep up on killing Terminators.
If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of Dice dice.
And these inner circle units, talk to me about them. What are their stats like?
So they would be, it's 4 attacks a guy there's like a big swing profile and then like an anti-horde profile. So the big one is strength 6. They got an AP buff in the latest balance slate, so they'd be strength 6, AP 2, damage 2 with lethal hits built in, and then they have
that's pretty insane. Your whole army has like lethal hits all over the place too. That's like
because the Terminators have got
up your anti-tank.
Yeah, because the Terminators are anti-vehicle monster 4 up, and then all the sword guys have got this 6 up lethal profile, and then the other profile is they can go like anti-infantry and they get sustained 2 with 5 attacks each.
Wow.
At AP 2, damage 1. So if they go into like 20-man boy unit or something, just the amount of attacks you can get with those starts getting silly.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, this sounds horrific.
And if there's a character in there, you're +1 to hit, so you're hitting on 2s.
So I totally see how this works, right? Like you've got scouts and jump pack intercessors for early game skirmishing. Then you get your Terminators up on the objectives, and from there you're advancing and charging, aggro moding, plasma scepters going. Like this, they're hellblasters going. This is like everything makes sense, everything solid kind of army. With that in mind, like what's your approach to like secondaries and primaries? How do you score points, deny points? What if your opponent is trying to play the mission instead of playing against your faction here?
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why I put so I got the intercessors in there. I was just trialing them out to stick either home, so I didn't have to leave too much back there. And then they can go off and play the game. I had the assault intercessor squad because we had a couple of the missions they were using with the battle line can do, like advance in action or fall back in action. So I wanted a couple of battle line units to be able to play the extra special rules. And then I tend to only use the scouts, 1 squad to forward deploy, unless it's an army that I need to block, like World Eaters or Votan, if you can get the drop before their infiltrate unit. Otherwise, I usually play them quite defensive to stay and score secondaries. And I tend to use my assault intercessor squads because they're only 80 points. It's a great data sheet, but if there's a card I need to score, they're going to go and score it.
Yeah, you've got a lot of options for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I imagine the army plays secondaries really nicely, and it just kind of flows together pretty well.
Yeah, and you usually, if you play aggressive, you're usually up on the primary anyway. If you can get all your charges off and hem somebody into their deployment zone, you're going to score your primary from just playing the game.
No, there's a potentiality with the new secret agendas, right, where someone can kind of lose the board early to you. You rock up a ton of primary and secondary points, but then they just claw back from behind on turn 5. You don't have much battle line. Maybe they steal all 3 objectives. You took too many casualties across 5 turns. Has that been a challenge for you, navigating around secret agendas?
Yeah, I only had, during the weekend, 1 person play a secret agenda. And at the time of playing a secret agenda, it was quite easy to see what it was going to be.
Right. They're often not that hard to predict.
No, sure. You can usually predict a couple of them. I haven't seen it affect my game yet. I think the secret agendas are more impactful when you're playing a teams tournament. You might get like 3 extra points for your team than you should.
Right.
Like in a singles tournament, if you're winning a game like 90-40 and they get 20 more points and it's 90-60, it doesn't
Doesn't really change the outcome.
It doesn't really change the outcome in singles, whereas in a team event, that might get you like 2 extra points for your team.
Sure, yeah. Do you find that your army really smashes it? Like most games aren't close. You get up, you stay up. And I remember when we played our game, you were very aggressive as well. So maybe this is just a play style thing.
Yeah. I like to cross the board as fast as I can.
Yeah, they were warlockers in my deployment zone turn 1. I remember that.
Yeah, that's just. I think that might be a play style thing.
I mean, it's definitely working for you, Ben. I mean, I personally am like the total opposite. I don't like to close games out early. I like to not come from behind, but take my time with it. Play a 5-turn game. It sounds like you like to get up and kind of get over on your opponent and push them down. A big part of that is Gladius, right? Like it allows you that flexibility.
It is matchup dependent as well. If something's like I played Demons in the one game, and you've got to screen a lot more careful, because if they do get these 6-inch charges off with blood crushers in the wrong places, you can get, you could lose the game outright. So a couple of opponents, you've got to be a bit cagier.
Makes sense.
And I played my game 5 a bit cagier against Tau as well, because the lethality of the shooting.
Right. And we're going to go through game by game your matchups and your approaches to them. So we'll save that stuff for part 2. But I love that you do switch it up for your matchups. Another question on how it plays. With respect to your doctrines, it kind of seems like you just go into advance and charge on turn 2, and from there it wasn't really clear. What's your approach to doctrines, and how important is timing with your army here? Yeah, so usually I'm using assault either 2 or 3, and then I'm if I'm playing an army that I can cut the angles with the Howlblast and not get shot back, they're pretty much going to go into Devastator whenever I need to kill something that's tough. Mm-hmm. And then I also like, in the early game, I quite often burn my tactical one quite early, because I get the squad tactics for flat 6 on all the infantry. I see. Yeah.
You can, in an early trade, if you're going to send the assault intercessors and the captain out to kill what they've put on an objective, but they've put it their side of the wall, you can charge through, kill their unit, and then if you're in the tactical, when they come to move to retaliate you or move out of their deployment, you can come back behind the wall. Very nice. Yes, you actually, you're not using it so much for the doctrine, but you're using it for the stratagem that gets better from the doctrine. That's it. Yeah. Occasionally, I'll put a unit in tactical doctrine if I know I'm gonna want the 6-inch reactive move. Right. Like in advance, if I'm planning ahead to it's a lot of pre-planning. Block an army or something, I used it in one game to move block some tanks coming out. So how do you set up for it? Walk me through, here's the board state, and here's where I decide I'm going to be in tactical doctrine so I can put my unit here, and then I'm going to move it 6 inches there. How do you even spot that? So I did it a few times with the assault intercessors. Turn 1, I'd go first and advance them out, and then they'd be in a line, or they'd move out 12 and do a secondary, but they're sat there, and then they're in tactical. And then because you put them so close to your opponent's army, well, as close as you can be, as soon as they end a move within 9 of them, you can move them 6. So if it's an all vehicle army, you can make it very difficult for them to get more than the 1 tank out. But just move blocking aggressively. Blocking aggressively, yeah. You lose the unit, but sometimes that buys you the angles that you've staged at, stops you being shot back. Yep, that makes sense. I obviously explained that strat very it's definitely one of those gotcha at the start strats, to my opponent about how it works, because it's a very powerful strat. But anything that reactive moves is. How are you generally spending your CP and stratagems? Are you just using this every turn? Is it kind of like an Eldar Phantasm? No, I only use it where it's going to obviously affect the game. I could use it every turn if I want to, but the beauty of Dark Angels is Azrael gives you 2 every turn. So you've always got some CP to play with whenever you need it. Right. So you kind of pick and choose what strat makes the most sense in the moment. What are your other key ones? Yeah, so you've got squad tactics we've just gone through. You've got it's +1 AP and Lance on the charge, which is really good. That's in the assault doctrine, you get the +1 AP. A lot of them trigger on the doctrines. They get slightly better if you're in the right doctrine.
Yeah, you really buff up like medium strength weapons to lethal hits, plus on the wound. Really, anti-tank comes out naturally. I like that a lot.
Yeah. And then you've got the shooting strat for Devastate. If you're in Devastator, it gets better. So it's plus, it ignores cover. And then if you're in Devastator Doctrine, it's +1 AP. So you can make the Howl Blasters, if you really need to, AP4, ignore cover.
Wow. That's crazy.
So if they don't have an invuln, they are just dead, usually.
Yeah.
And then you've got, which one? Obviously, Armor of Content. The fifth one off the top of my head is escaping me.
I imagine
it's the one I said earlier. It's the adaptive one, so you can put a unit into one of the Doctrines.
Oh, okay.
And then you've got 2 CP on the chapter for Fight on Death.
Yeah, it's a very, like you said, it's toolbox, Swiss Army knife of strats, pull out what you need. I can definitely see how this army rewards you for being a good general and kind of, it's just a good singles gameplay army. Yeah. It's got a little bit of everything. I like it.
I think it's the best detachment that Space Marines have access to.
Wow, that's a bold claim. Yeah. Gladius is great. It hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
What's your take on not running very popular choice units? I mean, things like Plasma Inceptors or Bolter Inceptors aren't in your list. Things like Infiltrators. Yeah. All kinds of good units. Just, I understand they only have so many points, but, what's your take on omitting those?
So I think in a future list, I would probably put the Infiltrators back in. I did play with them a lot because they kind of do the sticky job anyway to a certain degree, and they block out a lot of the board for things like Hypercrypt.
Right.
Plasma Inceptors I've tried on and off. I like the built-in reroll wounds, but I think they need to shoot your oath target, and it's a 260 point unit that when it drops in, it's kind of gone.
Right.
Unless your opponent's not going to give you the best unit to just shoot. If you drop it 3 away, it's probably dead in return. Mm-hmm. But it is something I've looked at. And then the other thing I've looked at, which I know I've seen a lot on your channel, is the Eradicator brick with the Biolegend.
Yeah, John loves that thing.
Yeah. So that's one I've tested a fair bit. And to be honest, it would be between that and the Howl Blaster brick. I have one or the other.
Right, it's one or the other.
I wouldn't do both, yeah.
Well, I'm glad it's working for you. It seems really strong. Like it's very similar to a lot of the Dark Angel Gladius lists that we're seeing at the World Team Championships. So I'm sure it's great, and I'm glad we got to cover it. It's going to be popular and on the rise, Ben. You're doing great with it.
Yeah, it was good.
Awesome. Well, only one more question before we head off to our part 2 for our patrons. If you had one piece of advice to give any aspiring Warhammer players, what would it be?
Get to as many events as you can and mix with the people there and start talking to them, and you'll get invited out for dinner in the evening, and once you get a group of people that you can you meet and and you hang up. Even when my team don't go to an event, I usually go out for dinner with another team. There's always somebody there. I think once you get that group of people, it's easy to keep interested in playing.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice. It's community, it's friendship. That's what this game's about. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Ben. It's been a pleasure talking to you, getting to know how your Gladius list works. It's very effective. It's very you, and I'd love to see you adapting to the times, and they're all working nicely for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Yeah. All right. Well, listeners, you can head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/AOW40K. There you can access part 2 of this conversation, along with 250 other conversations for our patrons, and an amazing Discord server where you can talk to me, our guests, our coaches, the whole Art of War studios in the Discord server. So check out our Patreon, support the show, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. The Art of War 40K.com.